barrier. As an example of just how impossible this is, Kusakabe asks Miwa to toss him that water. However, after she gives him the bottle, he throws it back, telling her to give him the water, not the bottle. Confused, Miwa just facials the absolute hell out of Kusakabe, while in behind them, Mei-san explains that expanding a domain without a barrier is like trying to hold water without a bottle. With no container, can you even accumulate water? Can you paint on thin air without a canvas? With no stem, root or leaves, can a flower bloom from a seed? Maki compares it to using software without even having a PC to run anything on. It's frankly unfathomable in their eyes. It's completely impossible. Even still, she notes that Megumi's domain was never enclosed within a barrier, and having heard that before Megumi was given his grade promotion, Kusakabe explained that to use it, he actually had to use an existing structure to enclose his domain. Noritoshi Keimo, or as we know him now, Goro Kenjaku, was able to pull it off by himself, so it does prove that it can happen. Choso, who actually fought during that battle, pointed out that they'd prepared to use a simple domain on Kenjaku while Tengen dismantled his domain from the outside. However, because of the barrierless domain, it was the simple domain that was torn apart. Miwa, who's confused over what exactly would clash in this attack, states that the short effect is imbued within the barrier itself, so it can only clash with another barrier. She also realizes that, well, everyone's talking as if their domains are a given, but domains devour an insane amount of curse energy, so wouldn't avoiding using them make sense? Inumaki speaks up and notes that, well, it doesn't really matter since Gojo has an infinite amount of curse energy. Ino knows that fact isn't actually true, and it's just due to how he's skilled at using his specific technique. If his curse energy consumption rate ends up being less than what he actually replenishes, then it could technically run out. That's just working under the assumption though that he's using it like normal. If he changes things up and starts using domains consecutively, then that could be a completely different story. Not having even mentioned what Sukuna is actually capable of as well in fighting, Kashimo speaks up to state that the sharpness of his technique's activation is unparalleled. The way he can switch things up in a matter of milliseconds from innate techniques to domain amplifications is utterly amazing. If Gojo literally wasn't who he is, then Sukuna would comfortably be winning in terms of curse energy utilization. What's more, his total curse energy output is probably even more than Yuta's. From what he can physically tell, he'd say it's probably double the amount that he actually has. Momo, who's been pretty quiet this entire chat, speaks up and feels that maybe nobody, not even them, knows how this is going to play out. If Gojo and Sukuna's domains do clash, who knows what could possibly happen? Then, right on that exact moment, and after all of this insane build-up that we just went through, Higuruma signaled that they are about to begin the domain clashes. Back in Shinjuku, both Sukuna and Gojo throw up their respective hand signs to simultaneously open the Infinite Void and Malevolent Shrine. With Sukuna now appearing above his shrine and Gojo standing a few feet back, it's explained that the two are evenly matched. They form a perfect pair within Gojo's barrier, which in turn meant that both guaranteed hits overlapped each other, then cancelled themselves out. In this battle, and as the two expand their domains, should either one of them sustain severe damage, it will cause the collapse of their domain, and the other one's sure hits will immediately take effect. Back at the TV room, Kusakabe and Mei both react in shock as somehow, even with their domains active, they're still evenly matched. In Shinjuku, the pure force of the two overlapping domains caused the surrounding area to start getting atomized. Sadly for Gojo, the effective range of Sukuna's domain reaches even beyond that of a barrier. And just as Yuji knows that a domain expansion is weak from the outside, Gojo's domain cracks and shatters as it's shown that below it, Sukuna's domain now sits perfectly fine. With no protection against Sukuna's short hit technique, the effect immediately flies forth and seemingly cuts down the strongest sorcerer of today. Having taken the slash to the neck, Gojo nonchalantly activates his reverse curse technique, which everyone back at the lair reacts to. Higuruma states that as long as Gojo stays in range, the slashes will never stop coming. Choso, who assumes escaping is probably the port of call for Gojo, is backed up by Hikari, who somewhat agreed with him. However, it's more that Hikari assumes Gojo will make a dash for the exit, whereas Kusakabe realizes that teleporting is out of the question, since it's an application of the limitless technique. Due to the use of his domain expansion and it being destroyed, it's plausible that for a moment he can't use his curse technique, which, like they state, means he's in store for one hell of a beatdown. Back inside of Sukuna's domain expansion, Gojo is relentlessly slashed over and over again by the sure-hit effect of the domain. Somehow though, Gojo manages to calm himself as he knows for a fact that when it comes down to techniques, Limitless is far better. Having been able to consistently overpower Sukuna's short-hit effect with his use of reverse curse technique, Gojo, just like what everyone else had expected, makes a dash for the exit. Sukuna immediately makes a dash to keep up with him, while remarking that he isn't going to just let him escape. Grabbing his leg though, Gojo, still while constantly getting slashed, pulls him in and knees Sukuna into the floor. Towering over him, Gojo attempts to land a curse energy infused overhand, but misses, only cracking the floor as Sukuna manages to quickly weasel his way out. Standing there and looking at his opponent, Sukuna remarks that Gojo's still moving pretty well, considering that he's been activating his reverse curse technique at full output in order to survive the constant slashing. Gojo, on the other hand, notices something extremely important. To him, it looks like Malevolent Shrine itself is the heart of the domain, not Sukuna. Back inside of the headquarters, Yuji ponders what would happen if someone did destroy the heart of the domain, or like the shrine specifically. The Big Brain Kusakabe brings up that objects inside of domains don't tend to hold any special meaning or significance, so think of it as like it wasn't even there to begin with. Mei-san thinks that if it is a symbol of the domain, then you wouldn't even be able to destroy it, and even considering Gojo's insane skills, it doesn't look like he's taken any measures to actually try to destroy it. Suddenly, Gojo activates the new Shadow style, Simple Domain, taking Kusakabe by surprise as he probably didn't expect to see this one. Yuji though noted that Gojo said one time he could use it, but wasn't able to actually teach it. During the battle, he was able to use his Simple Domain to counter the short hit effect while simultaneously using reverse curse technique to heal his body. Confused, Yuji wonders how one even manipulates their own curse energy while reverse curse technique is active. Again, Gojo activates another use of the Simple Domain before darting at Sukuna and attempting to strike him. In an instant, he's once again pounded by the short hit effect, layering Gojo with a plethora of cuts though. Again, he activates another use of Simple Domain and reverse curse technique, causing Sukuna to call this all a little bit tedious right now. Randomly though, everyone back at the headquarters is taken by surprise when they see Gojo start attacking Sukuna once more without using reverse curse technique to heal himself. Someone wonders if he's running low on curse energy, but Yuta refutes this as it's frankly impossible. There's no limit to Gojo's curse energy, even though there totally is. Speaking up though, Eno mentions that, like he said before, the assumption rate could currently be off. Right after domain expansion, he started using reverse curse technique at maximum output, which uses up twice as much curse energy, and that's not even taking into account the fact that Sukuna is also rushing at Gojo himself. With the two powerhouses of the series also rushing at each other once again, and the cuts not stopping for Gojo, everyone wonders if Gojo is about to lose. Jumping on Sukuna though and wrapping his hands around the back of his head, Gojo activates his curse technique reversal, before leaning back and pulling his hands up in preparation to end the fight. Blown away with what he's just witnessed, Yuta wonders if it's even possible. In his mind, the reason he wasn't able to heal himself for a moment was because Gojo was using reverse curse technique to heal his exhausted curse technique. Unleashing Red, Gojo shoots forth a blast of reverse curse technique, propelling Sukuna back into the shrine that makes up the center of his domain. Noting that he somehow managed to survive the blast, Gojo activates reverse curse technique to heal, and jokes that damn, this dude is really turning into a pain on the ass. Going into more depth on the insane feat Gojo just did, Yuta explains that a curse technique which has been burned out by using domain expansion is an entirely different matter than physical damage. It's like when a machine overheats, if it isn't broken, you have to let it cool down or it won't work again. Interpreting this, Maki makes it easier to understand by saying that reverse curse technique can repair damage, but it can't help with the cooling effects of it. However, it looks as if this understanding of the ability is completely wrong. Back in Shinjuku, and having made it out of the effective range, Gojo asks if Sukuna is able to expand the size of his area. Not even giving Gojo a second to think, Sukuna instantly expands the size of Malevolent Shrine's domain expansion to its maximum. In the same moment, Gojo, to the shock of everyone, also expanded his Infinite Void for a second time. With everyone watching, they wonder if Gojo's really dumb enough to just fall into the same trap as before. Mei notices it first though, and Higuruma, who, by the way, for a new sorcerer, is so big brain, states that Gojo switched conditions on the external and internal conditions of his barrier, which, in simple enough terms for myself and Yuji to understand, means that Gojo this time is able to protect himself against the attacks from outside of his domain. Reinitiating the battle once more, both Gojo and Sukuna trade hands back and forth, but not once do the hits actually end up landing on either side. Jumping back, Gojo is absolutely blown away as he understands that somehow Sukuna was able to use his domain expansion and amplification at the exact same time. On top of that, he's becoming more comfortable inside of his own Infinite Void, and his curse energy output is only increasing. So, in usual Jujutsu Kaisen combat, you cannot use an innate technique that is etched into your body while using a domain amp. But if you go and imbue your domain with a technique itself, then this is an entirely new situation. Throwing a punch, Sukuna manages to dodge back out of the way. However, as he pushes, trying to strike Gojo, the Six-Eyes Maniac manages to evade the strike and thump the side of Sukuna's body. Managing to spin out of Gojo's sight, he quickly understands that somehow, and while inside of his own domain, Sukuna turned off his sure hit effect. Knowing that the only ones who are unaffected by Infinite Void are Gojo and anyone he touches, Sukuna's plan is to expand his effective range and increase the power of the Binding Vow even further than he did in Shibuya with Megami. By using a Binding Vow, Sukuna is able to further increase the power of his domain outside of Gojo's domain. He does that by removing his sure hit guarantee inside of the domain, while simultaneously also keeping himself safe from Infinite Void by touching Gojo. Due to all of this, and again just like last time, Gojo's domain collapses and the man is followed by a plethora of strikes that seemingly knock him away from Sukuna. With everyone back at the TV station headquarters place, whatever it honestly is, I don't have a clue what to even call it, react in horror to what's going on in the current battle, Hajime states that if Gojo dies here, he's going out to fight next, so don't even try and stop him. Over in Shinjuku, Gojo activates another technique that he notes he hasn't used much since he mastered his domain. Seeing this, Kusakabe spits out his smoke in awe of just having seen Gojo use the Falling Blossom emotion. For those of you who forgot, because I think it's only been used like maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the series, it's a secret art of the Big Three families, an anti-domain technique. All in all, it's an application of curse energy that automatically repels anything you touch. It wouldn't ever be able to do something against the complex domain like Infinite Void, but if you're up against something like simple slashes, it's pretty useful. Jumping in, Shoko says that he most likely used it so he can heal his burned out curse technique, or at the least buy some time. Again though, like what is this, his 3rd time now? Gojo blows them all away as he activates another use of Infinite Void. Unlike all of the previous uses though, this time it's completely massive in comparison, and in Kishimo's eyes, it looks as if Gojo was trying to encapsulate all of Sukuna's domain within his own barrier. Mei thinks that it's a bad move trying to expand a domain to that size, as it'll drastically lower its effectiveness, and, like Higuruma states, even if the domain isn't destroyed, it's still pointless unless he wins the battle inside of it. Suddenly, Gojo's domain cracks, putting everyone on edge and making them think that it's about to fail. Momo though quickly speaks up that no, it's not broken, in fact the barrier is quickly changing size and now it's only a fraction of the original size. With Gojo's domain only like the size of a basketball now, Kusakabe remarked that this is frankly impossible, causing Mei to joke about how many times they've said these words today. Maki curiously questions its outward appearance and if the inside is that of a similar size. Kusakabe agrees with her, as that's why when you're usually trapped inside one, you can't get out unless you find the edge of the barrier. Even if you find that edge, a normal domain is resistant to attacks from the outside, so escape is still extremely limited. What's most important when it comes to a barrier technique is a concrete image. Usually, if you try and envision a barrier too small enough to hold yourself and an opponent, it would just collapse. Just like the prison round though, and probably due to his time being confined in a small space there, it's now allowing Gojo to take that and implement it into his domain during the battle. Still, Kusakabe can't grasp the process around how he's able to change the conditions of his domain each time he uses it. Barriers, particularly domain barriers, typically have a set of internal and external parameters. By discovering their own blend of these parameters, every sorcerer is able to establish their own domain. Confused and piping their heads up, as obviously this wasn't how Higuruma and Hikari figured out their domains, like they open their domains by default as a part of their curse technique. In any case, they aren't usually things that can be changed easily. Kusakabe ponders if he changed the size of his domain because it was too difficult to maintain the larger surface mass, so he had to compress it to make things easier. Or maybe it was because he wanted to see if he could cover all of the Malevolent Shrine with an even larger barrier. With Gojo's domain beginning to shake back and forth at such a tremendous speed, the earth itself begins to rumble. Mei points out that even still, Gojo's domain has managed to hold, and Yuta states that Sukuna has also decreased his domain so he could increase the output of his curse technique. So, pretty much now, if this version of Gojo's barrier does end up breaking, they'll enter a stalemate. However, Gojo will actually end up being on the back foot as he will run out of options technique-wise. Flashing back over to Shinjuku, sadly, once more, Gojo's domain is again shattered, and Sukuna emerges victorious for a 3rd time in a domain struggle. It's either the 3rd or the 4th now, I'm honestly losing track throughout the script here. Having watched his sensei reappear, Yuji screams out for him. However, In that moment, all of the other sorcerers are flabbergasted as they witness Sukuna's malevolent shrine start to crumble and fall to pieces. On top of that, it's shown that at some point throughout the domain struggle, Gojo was able to land a clean blow to the chest of Sukuna, causing the King of Curses to finally take some proper damage. Seeing this over their monitors, all of the sorcerers scream in joy, believing that Gojo still has a chance to win in this battle. Funnily enough, it was actually simultaneous. At the exact same time Sukuna destroyed Gojo's domain from the outside, Gojo had actually destroyed Sukuna's domain to the point that he wasn't able to maintain it any longer. Yelling at Miwa, Kusakabe asks if she was able to keep track of what was going on in this fight, or if anyone kept track of the time that Gojo's barrier was active. Speaking up, Mei reveals that it was active for 3 minutes and 9 seconds, but if it was more specifically after the moment that it was minimized, then that was exactly 3 minutes. Higuruma believes that now the domains have collapsed, neither of them will be able to use their curse techniques anymore. If that is the case, Maki thinks Gojo can make the first move, since he can restore his burnt out curse technique just like he did before. But sadly, Sukuna can also do the same with reverse curse technique, and speaking of himself, now that he knows how it works, Yuta theorizes that he could probably do it too, though, like he mentioned earlier, it can't be used to heal a burnt out curse technique, but it actually can. He's just tripping right now. The reasoning that Gojo actually showing this to Sukuna is a terrible problem for everyone is because, back in the past, Sukuna was able to split his spirit 20 times into 20 different objects called Sukuna's Cursed Fingers. After seeing this ability just once in the past, Sukuna learned how to turn himself into a cursed object, and now that he's seen this new ability, it's most likely he'll also be able to restore his burnt out curse technique. In Shinjuku, Sukuna boosts his way up onto a bridge, giving a moment of peace before noticing that random parts of the road start to get smashed up from below. Quickly jumping off the bridge and onto some railing nearby, Sukuna notices Gojo break his way up through the bridge behind him. Then, turning back around, realizes that his escape route was blocked by a ball of rocks that Gojo had perfectly floated there using his infinity. With absolutely nowhere to go, Sukuna throws up his hands to block and takes a kick that sends him sliding back along the sidewalk. Taking a moment to think about the fight, Gojo wonders why Sukuna has been stubbornly avoiding using any other curse technique than his own. Even when the strength of the barrier was lowered and Gojo had flipped the conditions on it, he didn't try to destroy it from the inside. Instead, he took the riskier option. While they cancelled out each other's sure hit effects from within the domain, Sukuna had no other choice but to use his domain amplification in order to beat his limitless curse technique, which was actually a massive advantage for our man. Still, as he saw earlier, within a domain, Sukuna is unable to use buildings to attack. In fact, until after Gojo's domain was destroyed, he technically had the upper hand for over 3 minutes. Yet, in spite of that, he can't seem to understand why Sukuna didn't ever attempt to make use of something from the 10 Shadows technique or Maharaga while in a domain. He has the memory of Megumi and the conversation that happened between them, so he knows for a fact that someone of the exact same power died to a person like Megumi. Gojo just ponders if he's scared he'll beat Maharaga in one shot. However, in that exact same moment, the wheel turns and blood begins to drip from his own nose. Fucking nosebleed though, Gojo was baiting our damn ass with that one, and in an instant, both him and Sukuna throw up their hands to perform another domain clash. Yuji points out that again they activated it at the exact same time, and Angel, who's right next to him, brings up that Sukuna can now restore his burnt out curse technique, or maybe just decided to hide the fact that he could until now. Kusakabe knows that within the next 3 minutes that it should take Sukuna to destroy Gojo's domain from the outside. Gojo will need to damage Sukuna to the point he can't maintain his domain from the inside. Shoko, joking that they probably shouldn't talk as if Gojo was on the back foot yet, brings up that if Sukuna is hit at all by Unlimited Void, then man is completely done for. Due to this, it's certain that if Gojo is able to destroy the Malevolent Shrine within the next 3 minutes, then he will win this battle. Inside of Shinjuku, and having flared up his curse energy fists, Gojo pounds Sukuna with a barrage of punches that really only bruise the King of Curse's arms. Jumping up, Sukuna tries to quickly get over his shrine, however, he's knocked into the floor, then, while incapacitated, is grabbed by Gojo's infinity and pulled towards himself. Having been flung towards Gojo, Sukuna just manages to block a devastating stomach punch. Randomly though, and I'm assuming man's used Yuji's divergent punch to delay the hit of his curse energy, Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine is completely destroyed, while in the exact same moment, Gojo's domain also ends. Falling to the ground and looking up, it's evident that this time, Sukuna took a serious blow, as half of his face appears to be missing. With everyone believing that when it comes down to domain struggles, Gojo is stronger, they all hope deep within themselves that he can win.
Back in the battle and throwing a fat right hook, Gojo sends Sukuna straight back into the side of her bridge pillar, breaking it in the process. I don't even know what we're at now, like this is utterly insane. And in that moment, Gojo and Sukuna launch another set of domain struggles. Yet, unlike all of the previous battles, something is actually different here for the first time, and Yuta can't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, Gojo was able to expand his domain earlier. Inside of the domain struggle, it is revealed that Sukuna was indeed busy healing his body, and because of that, he was late restoring his curse technique. It was less than 0.01 seconds, but Unlimited Void landed on him. As an infinite set of infinite information rushes into the cerebral cortex of history's strongest sorcerer and the king of curses, our man, today's current demon, rushes forth and pierces the chest of darkness incarnate. Only 2 minutes and 40 seconds after they expanded their domains, Gojo was able to collapse Malevolent Shrine within his innate compound. With nothing, not even the friction in the air available for Sukuna to use now, he stands there dumbfounded as the full effects of Satoru Gojo's infinite void connects with his brain. Not done yet himself, Gojo lets everyone know that crushing his heart was only the beginning. Now, he's gonna take everything from him. However, before he's able to even connect with Sukuna, a set of prolific words are spoken. With this treasure I summon, 8-handled, sword-divergent, Scylla Divine, General, Maharaga. Skitting out with the fact that, Sukuna managed to summon him in that moment, Gojo just assumes that it hasn't had time to adapt to Unlimited Void yet, so surely he can destroy it in one shot. Activating Curse Technique Reversal, Gojo is just baffled when he witnesses Maharaga literally not care, and instead with his Sword of Extermination slashes down, completely destroying Gojo's infinite void. Falling to the ground now, Gojo can only gasp as he realizes that somehow Maharaga had already adapted to his domain expansion, allowing him to freely attack from the inside. Realizing that Maharaga had been summoned, Choso points out that it has the ability to adapt to any attack, even Unlimited Void. Using Reverse Curse Technique, and with Maharaga by his side, Sukuna knows that Gojo was well aware of the Shikigami's abilities. In the battles so far, both of the guys have had their domains cancel each other's out a total of 5 times. Gojo's Sure Hit effect targeted everything within their domain, whereas Sukuna's Sure Hit effect targeted everything inside the domain with the exception of himself. This means that the Sure Hit effect targeting Sukuna was still in place. Crazily enough, one of the duo was able to take on Unlimited Void a total of 5 times, while shouldering the burden of Maharaga's adaptation. This person wasn't Sukuna though. No, it was someone else entirely. Blown away with the revelation, Gojo quickly figures that somehow he managed to adapt to Unlimited Void within 0.01 seconds of his domain opening. Doing some more crazy deductions, he figures that, like I said, somehow Sukuna overcame the burden of Maharaga's adaptation ability. Then realizing he's wrong, states that the one actually taking the damage was Megami's soul. Deep inside the conscious of Megami's mind, we see him barely awake with Maharaga's wheel floating directly above him. Seeing Gojo now and wondering what's on his mind, Sukuna asks, "What's up?" To which Gojo says, "Nothing really, it just warms his heart to see him using such fraudulent abilities." Replying to his underhanded diss, Sukuna states that Unlimited Void is an ability that Gojo activated once inside of his domain. He originally expected it to be a pain in the ass trying to figure out this technique, and at the start of the fight he had planned to neutralize it first.
So, while unable to use amplification within the domain, Sukuna used Megami's soul to adapt to Unlimited Void using his own Ten Shadows technique. As a result, he wasn't able to use anything other than what was originally imbued into his own domain. Knowing that all Megami took then was the process of adaptation, not like the full effect of Infinite Void itself, Gojo begins pulling up his hand and remarking that Sukuna hasn't actually adapted Megami's soul itself to Unlimited Void, and if he opens his domain once more, he'll destroy him in one attack. Not phased over this though, Sukuna kinda just laughs and taunts Gojo while telling him that he's no longer able to open his domain. Instantly, and as he tries activating it once more, blood begins streaming from his nose, and everyone back at headquarters still watching the monitors begins freaking out over the possible outcomes. By the way, who do you guys think has left from the headquarters? Like, we can see a few people are still there from like flashing around between now and like what's released. I have a few thoughts in mind, like, well, where's Takaba? I haven't seen him since the start of their conversation, I'm pretty sure, back at like 2:20 something. Anyway, getting back to the story. Having found a way in now, Sukuna remarks that using reverse curse technique to heal his exhausted innate technique looks to have strained his physical brain quite a bit. To him, it's evident that his brain, more specifically the prefrontal cortex where the information on curse techniques is located, has been destroyed and repaired far too many times using reverse curse technique to heal his burnt out curse technique now. Oh my god, man, the amount of times I have said curse technique, reverse curse technique throughout this video, like, I am so confused, and I've probably messed it up like once or twice. I probably have. Anyway. Terrified at the fact that Gojo had been using such a wild technique, Yusuke just screams that this is way too risky. They all know that the brain, especially that section of the brain, is the most important, and you can't even compare it to simply repairing someone's normal bodily damage. Shoko speaks up, nervous over the fact that she kind of assumed by now that Gojo had gotten used to this effect on his brain. However, it looks like he's beginning to suffer. On top of that, Sukuna has actually done it fewer times, so he's in a much healthier battle condition. Back in Shinjuku, and as Gojo drops to one knee, Sukuna states that Gojo has reached his limits. Even if he could have expanded his domain again, he would have lost the instant that he did. Not to mention the fact that he wouldn't even be able to make it precise enough to actually be a threat to Sukuna. Taunting him like the demon he truly is, Sukuna lets Gojo know that next up, he'll bring the circumference of his domain inwards. From there, he'll be left with nowhere to run, and as he carves him up, he'll simultaneously adapt to his infinity. Saying his final goodbyes, he states that Gojo was born into an era without Sukuna, and was hailed as the strongest in the era. Yes, in the end, he just turned out to be playing saying those prolific words, domain expansion, one last time. Sukuna proceeds to unleash his domain. However, in an exact moment, all of his eyes begin bleeding profusely, and the domain fails. So, crazily enough, from the time of the previous domain, this last conversation has happened in second. Just like Gojo, Sukuna was able to sustain enough damage to now make an expansion possible. Jumping up, Sukuna after seeing this, Gojo just notes that it looks like it's hitting him pretty hard now. Then pointing at those pros, he knows that all of his students are watching him put his life on the line, so he's gonna go ahead and keep showing off for them. Jumping forth with a speed that Sukuna is unable to keep up with, Gojo throws a fat right hook to let his opponent know that he still has a long way to go to defeat him. Over inside of the main group's hideout, Kusakabe asks who there had been seriously punched by Gojo before. A few people speak up noting that, well, he didn't hit them, but they tried their best to punch him as hard as they could, and it was physically impossible. Due to only like a few people in the shooting case as well, it says that his fists curse energy, and on the moments of impact, all the video themselves are surrounding space. It feels as if he's been punched after hearing very briefly on the road. So however, Gojo is playing. Back in Shinjuku, it's shown that Gojo is completely dominating his own physical power. He boosts the ability to when Sukuna lands, Gojo uses all the roll that had previously broken away from the building to entrap the King of Curses inside a getting 400 Gojo smashed down. Only to see Sukuna out of the way. All of a sudden he stops as losing sleep, it seems like Gojo running at such a high speed that it creates a sweet Gojo Sukuna manifests what the real image and creates a beautiful and he seems to appear to Gojo clearly gains his orientation as a not in the has been attacked, the world turns and the adaptation begins. With that said, the world turns and seemingly attacks. Gojo knows that when Sukuna uses domain amplification and touches him, the world turns black. So it's safe to assume then